Del Taco is getting a new owner. Hello and welcome to the Week in Restaurants, a look at the most important stories in the restaurant industry this week. I'm Jonathan Mays, Editor-in-Chief of Restaurant Business, and I am here with Senior Tech Editor Joe Guszkowski. Waymo is getting into delivery. We'll talk about that interesting little nugget. Domino's had some fascinating things to say this week about the restaurant industry, so get ready for more depressing news. Later on in Tech Check, Joe talks about technology, which is a big surprise given that title. But first, Joe, have you been to Del Taco?
I've been there once.
Once? Really? Did you have a burger or did you?
I had tacos.
Well, yeah, that's probably
not very
smart.
memorable, but I wanted to try it.
Right. So this week, Jack in the Box, unsurprisingly, announced a sale of Del Taco, which, of course, we've been waiting for months. Company has been basically saying that they'll have a buyer by the end of the year. The sale price is $115 million to Yadav Enterprises. Anil Yadav is a major Jack in the Box franchisee, owns a number of different restaurants, dabbled into a number of different other concepts. And as both a franchisee and as a brand operator, had a big hand in TGI Fridays, for instance. The price is $115 million, which is an 80% discount off of what Jack in the Box paid for the brand 4 years ago. By the way, I get into that on TikTok for the record. So here's a little plug for that one. And I get into the reasons why. The thing I wanted to really delve into is the whole idea of Jack in the Box getting into multi-brand ownership and then getting out of it 4 years later. This is actually a pretty common issue. You know, you get these brands, they get this idea that they want to be multi-brand operators, right? And we see this quite a bit. And then they get cold feet once problems begin. And Jack in the Box, their sales just deteriorated badly this year. Their last sales, their sales are worse than they've been in like 15 years. This is actually kind of ridiculous. Del Taco is also having issues. I suppose, like getting rid of one and focusing on one brand, probably not the worst thing to do. But to me, I think that like more brands really need to, there's nothing wrong with multi-brand ownership. You want to get bigger, you want to get economies of scale, you want to be able to afford technology and investments and things of that nature. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I really do think you need to be prepared for it. And I think a lot of companies don't prepare themselves adequately for this sort of thing. And we see a lot of these sorts of problems with regularity, to me. That's my take on this Jack in the Box thing.
Yeah. Do you think that they bought the wrong brand or that they just weren't ready to operate two brands?
No, I think it's more they weren't ready to operate. They weren't really fully committed to it. The thing is, it's also it's really worth pointing out that these last 4 years have really changed the outlook on the fast food sector. And I was thinking about that. This morning, and I do talk about this on TikTok, but I'll talk about it here. The fast food sector 4 years ago was hot as hell. That was going to be the future of the restaurant business. We all thought that fast food restaurants were going to basically be the dominant force, even more dominant force than they already were in the restaurant industry for foreseeable future. And the reason is they had drive-throughs. Everyone's flocking to drive-throughs. They had been furthest along in technology, delivery, things of that nature. And so we all thought that fast food was going to be the future. And it just isn't. It just really isn't. In reality, what's been going on is fast food restaurants are the sort of focal point for consumer frustration over prices. People are not eating out as much, and fast food restaurants are bearing the brunt of that because the people that aren't eating out are lower income consumers. And it kind of speaks to this idea that be careful to make long-term predictions based on a singular event. And in 2021, that was still a pandemic thing, right? It was the pandemic recovery and the consumer reaction to that. And it wasn't going to last forever. So I think that what's going on is that they thought it was going to be one economy. They thought about it was going to be that the restaurant economy, the restaurant environment was going to go in one direction. And instead it went the exact opposite direction. And now we're facing this sort of situation.
Yeah, the pendulum has swung the other way. So which price do you think is closer to Del Taco's actual value? The original
$115 million.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's more
I mean the
appropriate.
575. I mean in 2021 the prices being paid for restaurant chains were through the roof. Del Taco was bought at a surprisingly high valuation at the time, and it really never worked out for Jack in the Box. I mean, this companies do erase mistakes and they'll pay the price for it. And this is it's not the worst thing on the planet for Jack in the Box. I mean, it sounds bad that, they lost 80% of the valuation, but the mistake was already made. And they've already paid the price on Wall Street and stuff like that. So, you know, they just weren't ready for it. Didn't really have the setup and things like that. But, if you're going to buy a second brand, just be ready because it's different. So I heard, Joe, from something that I read on Restaurant Business with your byline on it, that there's an interesting new company getting involved in delivery. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so there's this company called Waymo, which if you don't know what Waymo is, it's sort of like a Uber, but with the cars are self-driving. So they're fully automated vehicles that'll pick you up and take you to your destination. So they've partnered with DoorDash to deliver food. Actually, the partnership is going to start with grocery and convenience items, which I think is notable. So in Phoenix, you can use DoorDash to order from Dash Mart, which is like their little convenience stores, and your order may be fulfilled by a Waymo driverless car. Uber has also partnered with Waymo in that market for Uber Eats for restaurant deliveries. I think what's interesting about DoorDash's approach is that they're thinking about, what is the best use case for a driverless car? It may not be for a restaurant order. It may not be for a burrito or a coffee and a breakfast sandwich. That's a whole lot of car for a small item like that. But it might make sense for a grocery delivery or, a big package of paper towels, that kind of thing. So DoorDash's kind of new strategy here is really to use all kinds of different forms of automation for a really surgical approach to delivery. So they're getting into drones, they're getting into sidewalk robots. And of course, they unveiled their own robot, which is sort of like a hybrid. It can go on the road and the sidewalk for certain deliveries. So going with Waymo is just the latest kind of step in this. And it just shows that DoorDash is really serious about automating a lot of deliveries in the future, to the point where I will say this later in the tech check portion of the podcast, but if I'm a human delivery person, I'm starting to get a little bit concerned when you're using driverless cars, which is that's what I drive. If I'm a delivery worker, I start to get a little worried about what that landscape is going to look like in 10 years.
Yeah. It's the driverless thing is fascinating. I am not stepping a little bit outside the restaurant box for a second. I'm not terribly bullish on the future of the immediate future of driverless vehicles en masse in the US, maybe in certain markets, the way it is with Waymo right now. I just think that there are some regulatory issues. I think that there are in a lot of markets, there are some really complications with the weather, with things of that nature, with lights. You don't know how consumers or how drivers are going to react. Some of these things are relatively limited. I know you see these all over the place in like California, and I remember being in Phoenix and stuff like that. I just think it's going to take a while for this to really take hold. But that said, I mean, your point is, you do see, like, especially in delivery heavy area, in areas where there's just a lot of delivery. You can definitely see it. Like I've been to Miami several times, and you see those sidewalk robots all over the place. I got hit by one.
Oh my God. Are you okay?
It wasn't hard. Yes, I live to tell the tale, Joe. Yeah. So It is an interesting situation, like, to me, for sure. And I think we've been waiting for this idea of robot delivery forever. I don't remember, like, it's been years. I think like years since we first started hearing of this robot delivery. I just think that there's a long that road between, you know, robot delivery in certain areas and tests and things like that. There's a long road between that and mass adoption, and it's a much longer road. No pun intended, I swear, between these two things.
That's a good
I
point.
still think that, yeah, I still think drones probably. I'm a little surprised we haven't seen drones at a higher level. In fact, I've talked to some industry executives who expected it to be drone delivery to be a bigger deal than it's become so far. But we'll see. I mean, I say, like, DoorDash is a very legitimately innovative company.
Mhm.
And so I think it's just worth it to pay attention to what they're doing all the time, partly because they exert a growing amount of power within the industry, but second, because they're just very innovative and they do really interesting things.
Yep.
That is for sure.
Speaking of delivery, let's talk about Domino's, which does a decent amount of delivery.
They do. They just reported their third quarter earnings. They tend to lead the earnings season because their quarter ends a little bit sooner than most other restaurant companies. You know, and their comps were really strong. They've performed quietly very well over the past couple of years, ever since they got through their driver shortage. If you remember, in 2022, there was this massive labor shortage was at its worst, and Domino's and other pizza chains couldn't find any drivers. And so they had some really bad sales that year. They have really recovered from that. They've only had 2 negative quarters since then, and have really gotten a lot of momentum, at least in part in the last quarter, because they have a deal with DoorDash. Now, Domino's does its own delivery, but they're on the marketplace, which is where they want to be. The fascinating thing with that quarter was how negative Domino's was about September numbers. Essentially, they said, now Domino's, just for what it's worth, does not give you any insight into their current quarter. They will never do it. But they took a relatively rare step of talking about conditions in the current quarter. And they said that there was a negative turn in industry sales, which is how they term this. They said that that industry sales took a negative turn in September. I'm at the Create conference, and I've heard from more than one executive that their September numbers were not good. It's kind of, it's not really surprising anymore, like, at this particular point. But what's notable about this is that we've been going through a full year in which things were just not great. And to hear that it's pulled back further, to me, is super disturbing from a number of different perspectives. And it really suggests that the end of the year is just not going, it's just really going to be a tough end of year, absent some sort of change. And I am not terribly bullish about the state of the industry the rest of the year and into next year, because there needs to be some sort of catalyst to get consumers back in.
The success stories are becoming fewer and fewer, far between. I mean, I can say Chili's and maybe a few other casual dining chains, but I mean, Dutch Bros maybe. But it's gotten to the point where I had a friend actually text me this morning and basically say, like, what's going on with the restaurant industry? Because restaurants around me are closing. He lives in Nebraska. So that's how bad it's gotten, is that, you know, the average consumer is now, like, starting to notice a pullback, you know, places closing their doors. You wrote about recently, we had 2 Chapter 7 bankruptcies. And this week, Lemonade, this brand, appears to be shutting all of its restaurants. So it seems like we've reached maybe a new low here in this long kind of decline coming out of COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of the thread with the Jack in the Box, and this is essentially that the market is just not there. And here's what's really going on. All right. So like 50% of spending right now is in the top 10% of Americans. The market is super bifurcated. The economy is just really bifurcated. And so there's people that have money, and then there's the rest of the population. So, and if you have roughly 90% of Americans are either maintaining or cutting their spending, the industry can't live off that 10%. Some restaurants certainly can. Some higher end restaurants certainly can live off that group. But you need people to fuel restaurant industry growth going forward. That's the issue. We just got too many consumers in the U.S. that are struggling and cutting back. And if they're going out, like 29% of traffic right now is on a deal, including a lot of third-party delivery orders. It's just the industry needs people. You only eat 3 meals a day, right? Like, I mean, you can get people in and for drinks. Like the beverage business is doing okay, right? You can get people in for drinks and maybe snacks and things of that nature on occasion, but on balance, you only eat so many times a day. And that means that you need more people to generate more sales. And if a large number of people are not eating out as much, that's a significant issue. And it's been years now. I mean, we're 2 to 3 years into this downturn, into this traffic fueled downturn, and it just appears to be getting worse. So I'm not terribly bullish. I mean, I think that we're probably one popped AI bubble on Wall Street from an outright recession and bigger, broader downturn than what we're seeing. That's legitimately what I think today. So, but I'm not an economist, Joseph.
Well, on that note,
on that note, all right. Yeah, all have a wonderful week. Thanks for enjoying our happy-go-lucky podcast. All right, coming up after these messages, Joe is going to talk about, what are you talking about?
I am talking about DoorDash a little bit.
All right, so you're going to get more on DoorDash from Joe after whatever ad Spoons puts on next.
Keep up with what's happening in the restaurant industry with Restaurant Daily.
I'm NRN Managing Editor Leanne Zinsmeister.
I'm RB Managing Editor Heather Lally.
We bring you a specific look of what's happening in the restaurant world from brands like McDonald's, single unit mom and pop shops, and hot button issues like inflation, tariffs, and more.
Start your day right with the Restaurant Daily podcast every weekday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And be sure to subscribe to never miss an episode.
Hello and welcome to Tech Check, where I, Joe Guszkowski, talk really fast about one big topic in restaurant tech. This week, all roads are leading to automated delivery. I began the week writing about DoorDash and its big push into autonomous delivery, and I have ended the week with 2 more stories about robot delivery, Starship Technologies' $50 million fundraise, and DoorDash's new delivery partnership with Waymo. So this flurry of automation activity is not a coincidence. There is now a very real sense, at least from the tech side, that robots will be a crucial element of food delivery going forward. The belief is that bots will not only help make delivery faster and less costly, but also that more delivery vehicles will simply be needed to fulfill the growing demand for delivery. There will also be a need for different types of bots, like drones, sidewalk robots, and driverless cars, to handle different order sizes and distances. If you're a robotics company or delivery provider, you will like the sound of this, but how about human delivery people? The company said there will still be plenty of deliveries to go around for humans and that they'll be rewarded with the more lucrative orders. But if you're a delivery worker, I think you have a right to be at least a little concerned about a robot taking your job.
And that should do it for the week in restaurants, which was edited, as always, by Spoons. Artwork by Nico Hines. You can find this and other episodes of the podcast on our website at restaurantbusinessonline.com, but by all means, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. For Joe Guszkowski, I'm Jonathan Mays. Thank you for listening.